Welcome back, everybody, to a very special, very different edition of the Whiskey Gingers podcast. I'm Brandon. That's Chris. For the first time ever, coming to you from different, undisclosed locations. But as the title of the episode alludes, the show must go on, and we refuse to miss an episode for you guys.
Definitely. Our dedication is paramount to our loyal viewers.
So, as you can tell, Chris is doing the podcast from his living room with his cat on the laptop, and I am
Yeah,
doing it from my other podcast studio.
nice.
I,
Very exciting to see. We do have a very exciting transitional period coming when we unveil the new studio as well. But we're
yes,
not
there
quite
will
there yet.
be.
It would have been this. It would have been this week.
Yes, there's a formal whiskey ginger studio coming your way, completely customized for the show. It'll be unlike anything any other whiskey podcast has put together. I've watched a couple of them. Some people. There's a guy that does it from his car every morning. Um, I kind of want to reach out. Our buddy in Colorado did have a pretty sweet setup with like his display case behind them. So I mean, I think he's
Hmm.
our main competition as far as set design goes.
We always got to be helping each other step up a rung.
Yeah, we saw what he did, and we had to take it up to another level. But considering the fact that we're not together doing it, it's really more fun to try like the new whiskeys when we're like, we're in the same frame. We're kind of just, having dinner, hanging out a little bit. So we didn't want to go get a special whiskey for this one, and we realized we actually never did Jameson. So this was the perfect excuse for us to phone it in, both literally and figuratively, and knock down some Jameson this time around. So I forgot to grab the bottle. I just poured mine in advance in these old dollar store whiskey glasses that so clearly say whiskey. I
I
am
got to get
missing
you a
our.
set of these nice ones.
I know I'm missing our scientific ones. It did make whiskey taste better.
They really do look like something out of like a biology class or something.
It looks like there should be steam coming out here or something.
Yeah,
Like off the.
certainly.
I mean, I'd almost be afraid to make an old fashioned though with those because they're so delicate. Like I don't.
Yeah, I think if you were gonna do it, you'd have to like make it another glass and then like pour it into this one. But at
Yeah,
that point, it's like too many glasses, and I like recipes that use the least amount of glassware as possible.
me too.
So,
We're a big one pan household, one sheet,
oh
one
yeah,
pan,
definitely.
whatever the least amount of dishes is possible.
I apologize for the barking dog in the background. That is
That's a
newest
little
edition puppy.
a little peek behind the curtain. Both Chris and myself have gotten new dogs in the past 3 weeks now. You've had
Yeah, something like
yours.
that.
Yeah, you've had yours for 3 weeks. We just got ours 3 days ago. So there's a lot of movement going on this
You're
podcast.
certainly settling in, that's for sure.
Yes, yeah, it's varying degrees, but
Well, you
it's
earned with your patience level, you earned a sip of some classic Jameson
yeah.
Citrus Tree
We'll
Brother.
talk about it after. I need a drink. Oh God, that hits different.
It's delicious. It's always so funny when you have something that you truly enjoy. I
And
mean,
you
like
go
Jameson
into
has
it
been
like
that staple.
when you go into it knowing you're gonna like it. Like all the other
Yeah.
ones, I kind of, if I'm being honest, this isn't me being a good like tasting host. I like brace myself going in, and then I'm
Hmm.
like pleasantly surprised when it's good.
Yeah.
Jameson, it's like old friend, come here.
Well, it's you get comfortable with stuff, and I think that it's easy to get comfortable with. I mean, I've been on record before by saying that I don't necessarily think it's the best bang for your buck, but I do think that it's a delicious whiskey. So, I mean, like a 750, I guess it's not so bad. A 750, I picked this up today for $33. So that's actually really not that bad in the end.
Yeah,
We've certainly bought more expensive 750 milliliters. So,
we've bought more expensive, but I think my favorite thing that happens like when we get these new whiskeys is when we'll find one that's like let's say 20 to 25 bucks, but is like tastes sophisticated, like tastes like
yeah,
delicious. It's like
it's
man,
a
we really like
knockout.
uncovered something.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's the that's more enjoyable to me than the actual like flavor of the whiskey itself. Is finding something to be like, wow, you could stand among like a bottle of $40 whiskey and be totally fine. I think that
Yeah, it's
that's
like
a
the it's the art
impressive
of the
thing.
deal. You feel like you found something.
Definitely. Do you recall your first? This is probably a stretch. Your first time ever having Jameson.
Man, I don't recall the exact instance, but I remember we were celebrating something, and actually, I do remember. It was my great grandmother's 98th birthday, and in classic, she was a Fisher, but in classic Fisher Farron Irish Catholic tradition, as a 98-year-old, she wanted me to make her chocolate martinis for her birthday.
It's
Again, she's
amazing.
98. So I made two for her, my mom, and then my dad and I each had a 7 and 7 at first. And then I was like, man, it's kind of my thing. Let me just go straight with it. And that's when I had the first whiskey and the first Jameson on ice. And
Nice.
I was sold from there.
That's awesome. I think that's a great story. I couldn't actually. I brought it up, but I honestly couldn't even tell you the first time I had it. I know it was at like a house party, for sure, because it was like the people that I grew up around. It was like the go-to drink for a lot of people was, oh, let's do shots of JMO. Let's have shots of JMO. So
Hmm.
I think that it definitely was just at like a house party somewhere, and then I didn't actually even really like it that much when I first had it. I was like, like this is all right, but it was also well before I started drinking more whiskey at that time. I
Yeah.
was, drinking vodka drinks and whatever. When you're younger, you're like, what's going to taste the best going down? So, and
Yeah.
now I think that this tastes better.
It's a very, uh, it's a very acquired taste. Whiskey is in general, whether it be JMO or something expensive or something in between. Um, Looks like Chris is frozen, so I'm going to try and monologue here for a while.
I get you cutting out a little bit. I don't know if you could hear me again
Yeah, you
or
completely
not.
froze there for a sec. It doesn't help. We
Yeah.
both. I live in an old house, and you live in the middle of nowhere. So internet-wise, we are fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right as long as
But
like the audio doesn't completely cut out. We ought to be all right.
no,
So
StreamYard's usually pretty good about like stitching it back together. This happens a pretty fair amount. But I'm trying to think what it was. Oh, you were talking about like transitioning in the whiskey, and like I think you could give me like a Glenlivet 18 or something if I like when I was 18 and hadn't had whiskey before, and I would have thought it sucked. Like it
yeah,
doesn't matter how
definitely.
great the whiskey is, if it's your first
Hmm.
one, you're not gonna like it.
It's certainly an acquired taste. I mean, like I remember years ago at the start of like my thought process of, oh, I'm going to start drinking whiskey. I literally just started like drinking different whiskeys, and it was miserable for probably 50%, 60% of the time.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what? Eventually, it's going to get better. Eventually, it's going to get better. And then it sounds so cliche, but it literally did. Like instead of just tasting burn every single time, you
Yeah,
start picking up different flavor notes and like all these different things. And clearly, there's definitely still whiskeys I don't like that I do think taste like just straight fire. But
for sure.
many of them I really enjoy now.
One thing I never did come around on was Scotch.
Yeah.
And one of our family friends who's since moved out to California, but every time he comes back, he knows I like whiskey. So every time he comes back, he brings like this real fancy. He's like a whiskey. I don't want to say snob. That's not the right word, but like a whiskey connoisseur of like the highest degree. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
drink it for enjoyment. I mean, he does, but he drinks it to like study it.
Hmm.
And he'll always bring me back these like one of 10 scotches. These this guy made it in his basement down the road, like crazy detailed things. And he's like, "Oh, do
Yeah.
you taste this? Do you taste that?" And I have to lie to him, and be like, "Oh yeah, it's delicious." And inside, like my head is hot, my chest is hot. I'm just miserable, and he's having the time of his life.
Scotch is certainly an interesting one. I mean, I've definitely had a few that I love, and then I've had a few that I think this tastes like ash from cigarettes. Like it's a weird combo sometimes.
Yeah. While we're talking about, and we'll get to this isn't our drink about a conversation, but since we're not really reviewing Jameson, we have more time to just kind of fill in. I remember the first time I had Buffalo Trace more than anything,
Hmm.
and that was I was at a dive bar in Delaware called the Deer Park. It's a legendary place. They used to do $4 pitchers on Thursdays back when the economy wasn't in the shitter. And we were there. It was me, my girlfriend, my buddy Bob, and his girlfriend at the time. And he ordered two of them. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll have one. This is after probably 7 or 8 Yinglings. No one's driving, nothing like that. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's fine, that's cool. Then he gets another one, and then another one. And in my head, I'm like, okay, that's 3 shots. But when you order whiskey neat, it's really probably 3 per glass, roughly.
Yeah.
So I got so hammered that I left my phone in the Uber and then went looking for my phone to try and call said Uber that had my phone inside of it.
Yeah.
And by
That's an
the
uphill
grace
battle.
of God, I got the most honest Uber driver in history, and he drove himself back to the house. He remembered what my stop was and brought my
Yeah.
phone back.
Wow. What a legend. That guy's the real MVP.
I handed him a 50 and just said, "You earned it, buddy. Keep it moving."
Yeah.
'Cause,
That's crazy.
yeah. So after that, I learned to drink whiskey more responsibly sometimes.
I told you, speaking of like funny losing stories, I'm pretty sure I told you about this when I was in Boston, but like it was really funny. The first night that we were out there, we were out there for my buddy's bachelor party, and we got out the car that I was in, got there a little bit later. So we basically like got to the Airbnb, we dropped all of our stuff, and then we like hustled to the first restaurant bar that everybody's grabbing dinner and drinks at for the first night. And I was the one that drove the car that we were in over there. So I had the keys on like my hook of my pants, like on the belt loop. And I was like, man, I really don't want to bring these out with me. But like, we were already getting in the Uber when I realized I had them on me. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, like this, I'm in a town, like a city that I don't know. Like, I don't really think this is a good idea. But I'm like, whatever, we're winging it now. So we go out to dinner. Everything's good. We get back. None of us from the carload that I came with got drunk at all. We had like 2 or 3 beers and we had a full, like 3-course dinner. So we
Yeah.
were all feeling fine. So I wake up the next morning and I see where I'm sleeping on the nightstand, my phone, my wallet, and no keys. And I'm
Okay.
like panicking at this point. I'm like, I was the one that drove us out here. I'm 7, 8 hours away from like the nearest person that has a spare key for me. What am I going to do here? So I'm like, I got to find it. So I'm thinking it like fell behind the dresser. It fell on the floor. It's underneath the carpet. We're checking every room in the house. I'm like, oh man, somebody lift my keys off me. And then finally, I start looking in the one place that I should have looked first, my backpack. And
Oh,
like, I did look in, I had a duffel bag and a backpack. I did look in my duffel bag and it wasn't in there, but I didn't look in my backpack and I found it in my backpack. And then I'm retracing my steps for the night. And I'm like, yeah, my dumb, not drunk ass went in and said, this is a safe place for me to remember where I put it. So that way I don't lose them. And I lost them because I
which,
put them
like,
somewhere where I had no idea where to go.
objectively speaking, it was like drunk. You
It
was like,
technically
"This is my
worked.
backpack. I'll know to look here."
Yeah, it technically worked, but I mean, like, I couldn't. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I recall every single place we were that night. Like, as I said, I only had like 3 beers. I'm like, I know every single place we were. I knew everybody we were talking to. I remember having them the whole night, like checking for them. And then we get back here, and it's like I went to bed, and that was it. And now I don't know where they are.
Okay.
It was such a weird thing.
Here's a question for you. Since I know you grew up in a more populated like Uber, like I guess Uber wasn't really bumping just then, but it was like a popular area, and then you moved out to kind of the sticks. Have you ever had the situation where you drive yourself to the bar, but you get too hammered, you can't drive yourself home, and you forget where your car is?
Yeah, I suppose that's certainly been a struggle. I feel like I've done that at concerts more than anything, believe it or not, because it's so easy to do at like a concert or a theme park or something
See, that's a
because there's
little
just
different.
so many places to park.
That's losing your car. That's not forgetting where
Yeah,
you put your car.
I guess that's fair. But I mean, in fairness, I do forget where it was. It's
That's
just that
true.
it's harder to find it. I mean, and to be fair, like here where I live now, if I lost my car in one of these parking lots, I would have to be in the hospital. I'd be so drunk because the parking lots are so small. But maybe back home where I grew up, it'd be a little bit different.
So yeah, okay. So here's the
That's the
genesis of
long
that
answer to
question
your question.
as to why I guess the better way to describe it would have been like, have you ever discovered your car just out in the wild?
Yeah.
Because I once, when I was going to college up in middle of nowhere PA, I would drive to the bar on Thursdays for 70-cent beer night, have 15 or 16, and then walk home because the bar was only a mile or so from where I was living. And then I would go about my day on Friday, and on more than one occasion, I would go for a run, like down to, we live near a river. I'd go for a run down to the river, and I would stumble upon my own
Your
vehicle
car.
because we have like, colleges have like community campus lots. So in my head, like
Yeah.
that's where it is. It's fine. And I'm
Yeah.
jogging through town. I'm like, oh, that looks a lot like my car. And then like I'll open it and I'm like, holy shit, this is where I put this thing.
Oh my God. You know what? The way that you phrase it in that context, I've definitely done that before. Like I've definitely been out to a bar, everybody's toasted, and then somebody either gets an Uber or somebody drives us home. And then you wake up and you look outside and you're like, holy shit, somebody stole my car. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh no, I left it at the bar.
That's a jarring experience when you like discover your own car just out in the wild like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty alarming, that's for sure.
It definitely like awoke something in me where it's like, okay, buddy, like you're still in college, but we need to rein it in here just a tad. Like you can't be losing entire vehicles.
Maybe 12 beers instead of 16.
Yeah, that was the night where fellow friend of the podcast, Ethan from episode like 4, we got 98 beers down that night between 4 people.
Oh my gosh. You guys
That's
really, all I'm saying is you guys were slack and you guys could have definitely put back 2 more.
You would have thought that's how bad it was. That those 2 were just a simple impossibility.
They're like sitting on the table and you're just like, I can't. I
Yeah,
simply can't.
that's honestly how it was. And I have one topic I want to get to because yours is a home run, and I want to do like the
Yeah.
last 10 minutes on
Mhm.
our headline. Let's drink about it. But I was thinking about this, given that we're coming up on the 4th, and summer gets a big rap as it's seltzers own the summer, beers own the summer. Does whiskey hibernate until cold weather, or is there a way to squeeze whiskey into your summer drink rotation?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, like, I feel like if I'm going to drink whiskey when it's really hot out, it's usually in like a mixer. Like, I'll do like a whiskey ginger ale or something because I need like the ice. And like, you know me, I don't drink my whiskey with ice when I'm drinking
Yeah.
it straight. So for me, it needs to be in a mixer. Or I feel like people just like do shots in the summer, which is silly, but like, that's the reality typically of like people are hanging out crushing light beer and all of a sudden somebody's like, all right, well, I've been drinking light beer for hours and I feel fine. Let's grab some whiskey shots or something.
Let's turn this thing up a notch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that says a lot about our kind of parties that we have around here, I feel like.
that is true. But I think you're 100% right. And this is a whiskey podcast. We'll love whiskey till the end of time. But I do think now that we're in like the heat of the summer, I think the only time I'm going to drink whiskey now is going to be either in the house with you during this podcast or like inside at a bar. Like I don't see
Yeah.
myself even sitting outside. Like no beach bars for whiskey for me. No barbecues. Like I can't be hot and then get a whiskey. If I'm hot,
It's
I
a
need a beer.
it's a tough outside drink for sure. I mean, like just in general, it just is a difficult drink to have outside. I'd much rather just reach in a cooler and crack a beer open.
Me too.
But there are like nice, cool summer nights where like you're at a bonfire or something where a glass of whiskey just hits way different.
Me too.
I mean,
I
those
think
are so rare typically, but right now with like how crazy the weather's been, it really hasn't even gotten that hot. Like we're going into July and I think the hottest weather we've had was like 85. It's really
Yeah, I
not even
mean
that
today was
bad.
up there. Today I think hit like at least with the humidity, it was pretty toasty. Like
Yeah, that was the tough part was the humidity today.
yeah, I'm sweating my ass off right now because the podcast studio is as much as I love it. My house is like a house within a house with like that back room, so I have no window to pull air from. Like it's a
Yeah,
bunker, so
that's
it's
crazy.
definitely a little toasty. But all right, I promised you the last 10 minutes. That's what we're doing. Chris had a home run of all home runs for our Let's Drink About It. So let's get to it.
It was mainly inspired by something that happened to me without mentioning my town. My wife and I own our own house. We would really love to have chickens on our property because, that's great. Eggs
Yeah.
are super expensive right now. And why the hell not? Like I like the idea of getting it where I know it comes from. So we were looking into it, and our town does not allow you to have chickens. And I find that really odd because we live in a small downtown kind of area that's very, very small. And everywhere outside of that is just farmland. So
Yeah.
like it just seems weird to me that less than like a square mile town has a rule against chickens, but then you drive 2 minutes out of it and everybody's got chickens. So
Yeah.
that sparked my annoyance, and I said, "What are some other like really weird laws or regulations that are out there in the states?" And that brought us to our "Let's Drink About It" topic tonight.
So I've got a couple absolute heaters in here. Did you have one on deck?
Yeah, I had a funny one, and it kind of fits with like the whiskey podcast. Apparently, hold on, I need to do something really quick.
Oh man.
So that I can actually, I have my second monitor above this, but I couldn't see it too well. It says, despite the legal drinking age being 21 in 4 states in America, there's a strange loophole. Students at a culinary school in Illinois can consume wine while under the age if they spit it out. It was argued that culinary students should know their wine well and that this would be an important factor in receiving a valuable education. So the state passed the sip and spit law, according to allowing culinary students to taste the wine as long as they spit it out afterwards, so that they're able to understand the crucial area of their education.
I see. Look, I don't get that because, like, I would like to know where they land on church wine. Because
I think that's always okay, because don't mess with religion. So
I get that, but like, I mean, this is someone's career. Like, you're going to send these people out into like these if you're in culinary school that early, like if you're in culinary school at an age where you're not allowed to drink, you're super serious about food. So you're going to go to like the top. You're going to be in these fancy ass like Italian and French restaurants just winging it.
Well, that's the point. That's why they're saying like it's legal to sip and spit. Like they can try the wine and get the flavor profile from it, but they have to spit it out afterwards. That's the whole legality of this.
I don't know about you, but I've yet to find an alcohol, a liquor of any kind where there was not some sort of an aftertaste that I feel like if I'm being recommended a $200 or $300 bottle of wine, I need somebody to know, like, from start to finish, how that wine's going to affect me.
Yeah. Well, the good news is people tend to drink before they're 21 anyway. So I think that loophole is a loophole in itself. It doesn't really matter.
That's true. All right. I got one kind of in the same, it's food related at least. So in the state of Louisiana, you cannot, quote, send unsolicited pizza.
I'm literally looking at the same one right now.
If in Louisiana you send anyone a surprise pizza, you'll have to pay $500 for doing that.
That's amazing. I love it.
My only question is, if you send the unsolicited pizza, does that mean you've already paid for the pizza and are sending it to somebody, or you're sending them a bill for the pizza? Because that depends if I'm on board or not.
Yeah, I mean, the context is pretty lacking here, but I would imagine that if somebody sent me pizza that I had to pay for randomly, I think I'd be pretty bummed about that too. But if somebody paid for my pizza and then sent it to me, that'd be a whole different ballgame.
Yeah,
I'm sure that people go unreported on that law, I'm sure.
Okay. I'm going to switch lists because I think you and I are looking at the same list.
Oh, this is hysterical, and I actually think this one's crazy.
All right.
Coming from a former New Jersey resident, I think this one's funny. The tagline on it is "Criminals can't protect themselves from bullet wounds." So if you read into this, it says, if you're found wearing a bulletproof vest while committing a crime in New Jersey, you will not only be charged with the crime, but have to be charged additionally for trying to protect another person or yourself against bullet wounds.
What? So Jersey's a no human shield state?
Yeah, I guess so, if you want to read into that. I mean, good for them, I guess. I don't want criminals out there wearing bulletproof vests either, I suppose. Makes my job a lot harder if they try and break into my house.
That's true. I would argue, though, that in Camden, everybody should have a bulletproof vest on.
Yeah, well, if everybody in Camden had a gun, maybe they wouldn't be having so many issues. But let's not dive into that.
Or it would be Fallujah.
Maybe. We'll see.
All right, I switched lists so we can keep this fresh. So, in Arkansas, it is illegal to sound your horn at any place where cold drinks or cold sandwiches are served after 9 p.m.
Not hot sandwiches, though, just to clarify.
Specifically cold.
So if you go get a cheesesteak at 9:01 and you beep your horn, you're in the clear. but
Yes,
heaven
but if that
forbid if
place
it's
is
an
serving a
Italian.
cold turkey hoagie, so help you God.
Yeah, yeah. Oh boy, that's an interesting one.
I mean, not that many people visit Arkansas for really any other reason. It was supposed to be, so the reason they passed it was because they found that those two locations served the most rowdy customers.
Okay.
Personally, me, if I'm drunk, a cold sandwich ain't getting her done.
This is probably one that doesn't even need to be a law. It's probably something that people should just like know that they did something wrong.
Mhm.
That it's taglined "I do 3 times marriages in Kentucky." It says Kentucky legislators have seemingly imposed a limit on love itself. No woman can marry the same man more than 3 times. Marriage is a complex area of law when it comes to bizarre rules across the U.S. And then it had some other facts. Before I go into the sorry, my dogs are jumping off of the couch like gazelles. Um, before we go into like the other ones, which are funny, I just think that if you get divorced and married to the same person 3 times in a row, you have to know that something's not working there.
Yeah, you got to learn your lesson. Considering that this is in Kentucky, is there any kind of a clause for marrying your cousin?
It doesn't necessarily say that, but it did go to elaborate a couple other facts. It says in Delaware, you can annul your marriage based on the fact it was subject of a jest or dare. So if you get dared to be married to somebody, you can annul your marriage based on that fact.
You know
Oh,
what?
wait, hold on.
I'm really glad you brought up Delaware because
Wait,
that
there's
leads us to
I
our
need
next law.
hold on. I need to do one more before you say that because
Okay.
it replies to your first question. In Utah, first cousins can marry after the age of 65.
They're literally
You get
just
to a
saying,
certain point and they're like, it is what it is. You know, they're old.
yeah, well, it's also like, man, you got no bitches for 64 years.
Oh
We'll let
man,
you
that's
cheat.
so funny. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just thought that you'd appreciate that having
I
asked the
absolutely do.
first
My life is
question.
better because I know it.
Yeah.
Circling back to the first state, Delaware, state in which I work. In
The first
Delaware, it is against the law for a pawnbroker to accept an artificial limb or a wheelchair as payment. You can't trade in a prosthetic limb to a pawnbroker, which means that it was attempted on several occasions. The wheelchair, I kind of think, is weird. Like, I mean, you can, like, if you want to trade up on your wheelchair, like, then, you know, that one you should be able to, it's like a car. Like, it's, you know, it's a mode of conveyance. You can trade up on your car. You should be able to trade up on your wheelchair. Does appear that we've lost Chris again. There we go. He's back.
I'm back.
You're good.
You were gone for a hot second there. I hate to make you repeat what you
no, absolutely.
just said, but I didn't catch any of it.
In the great state of Delaware, it is against the law for a pawn shop to accept artificial limbs or wheelchairs as a form of payment. Not to sell.
That makes sense.
To pay for another pawned item, you can get you used to be able to sell your artificial leg or arm.
You know what? Times are tough, so sometimes you gotta sell a limb.
Is there so let's say you're missing an arm, your dominant arm. Is there an item on this earth that you would go, you know what? I don't really need the right arm that bad. I want this.
Maybe maybe like a really cool cybernetic arm that's somehow better than my original, because I don't think that we're at the stage where like prosthesis are better than the original, obviously. But like if it was, hear me out, if it was, being a cyborg would be pretty cool, I suppose.
That would be pretty cool. I mean, you're definitely more of a tech guy than I am. I would be worried that I would not have control of my own arm. Like, it would just exist opposite of me, and it would start giving out some, like, really, like, throwing up gang signs or something in the wrong neighborhood.
What if it started killing people and then you went to trial, but your argument was that it's not you, it's your cybernetic arm?
I'm surprised that's not on this list of laws.
Cannot use a cybernetic arm as a excuse for committing murder.
I would expect. I mean, look, we've seen some weird shit on these lists. That would not be the weirdest thing we've seen.
This is a pretty relevant one for like today's day and age. Apparently, Netflix have been in the news recently for attempting to clamp down on password sharing, which
Yeah,
naturally
me.
eats
You can
into
go
their
fuck yourself.
profits. In 2011, though, a specific law had already been passed in Tennessee banning the exact action, although more targeted at hackers who harvest large quantities of passwords and then attempt to sell them on the dark web. So you can't, by law in Tennessee, share your Netflix password.
Yeah, Tennessee needs to mind their own business. Like, the amount of atrocities that are probably committed on Broadway on a regular basis, and they're worried about Netflix password sharing.
Yeah. Well,
And I love Nashville. I love Tennessee. I love the Smoky Mountains. The whole thing. I'm just here to say they got bigger problems. Memphis, have you been to Memphis? Not doing great.
here's one more funny one. No donkeys in Arizonian bathtubs. This must be the strangest law on the United States list. In the 1920s, a home in Arizona was flooded whilst a donkey was asleep in a bathtub. It eventually filled up and flooded. While the animal was swept away, the townspeople were able to rescue the poor animal, but followed up soon after with a law intended to avoid such an occurrence from being repeated.
Really?
So heaven forbid that your donkey happens to be in the bathtub in in Arizona when a flood comes through.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay. We got an option here. We have I can end it on a law that's like holy shit that still exists, or one that's just kind of completely out there for the fun of it.
I'm voting for the one that like holy shit this still exists because I always find those funny and interesting.
Okay. So it's in the South, which of course it is. In Louisiana, it is illegal for a woman to drive a car without her husband first waving a flag in front of it.
No way.
Yep. This law also applies in Virginia, but only when driving up the main street of town. The husband is supposed to walk in front of the car waving a flag.
I love it. We should adopt that everywhere.
Get women drivers off the road. I would adopt it honestly for all of New Jersey. Y'all can't drive.
Far less accidents.
You're not wrong. I know mine got a couple to her name.
Yep.
But
he said it.
Yeah, she's a little bit closer than I thought she was.
I
thought she was in the living room. She's
okay.
She's over on the porch.
She doesn't know the context. It's fine. You're safe.
I'll tell you what, considering that we've done every edition of this podcast at, except for what, 3 screw-ups maybe? Like 3 little network hack issues?
Yeah.
Definitely not. I mean, it's definitely way more fun in person, but the show goes on. True performers find a way.
That's worth drinking about, bud.
Cheers. This is going to be the last of mine. I'm
going to close it out there.
Here's to you. Thank you to all of our listeners for bearing with us. Next episode, all goes well. We should be in the new studio and back to the production value that you're accustomed to, but we appreciate you bearing with us here.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much.
I'm Brandon. That's Chris. We're the Whiskey Gingers. Peace out.